Hello. Here I'm going to gather up some information for you. I'm trying to get through to y'all best I can. We'll go into researching the source of things. We go into to look at sources, and one of the things I wanted to look at was everything pretty much Father gave me to show us the cross, and then he gives me the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar of the great kingdom of gold. In looking into the origins of the world and the gods from the Greek theologies and how it intersects with our societies back then and today, and the influences from this situation, I did a schematic here, and basically what it means here is chaos and Gaia. Okay, now chaos was first. In the beginning there was chaos. This is where you get order out of chaos, right? And Gaia is the earth. Okay, Gaia was without form and void. Darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said. This is the first word, right? Well, in this theology here, what you're seeing is they start with chaos. They start with darkness was on the face of the earth. And the earth was without form and void. Darkness on the face of the earth. This is chaos. This is where they start. From chaos, so the way that, if you read it, if you want to read it, comes Gaia. Gaia is earth. Now, earth begins, it comes, they say the earth comes in first. And they don't presuppose how it got there. So, what you're looking at with this analogy or this theory coming from the ancient Greek mythology, also find it very much of the Egyptian culture as well. Chaos and Gaia. Now Gaia gives birth to Uranus. Now Uranus is sky, which is heavens. So the earth comes into a solidified form and then gives birth to the spirit. So matter versus the spirit is the analogy and theory behind the beginning of this doctrine. Okay, 6 days are created, and on the sixth day you have Cronus, father of time, sixth child, and they birth no more. So basically Gaia births Uranus and then fertilizes Gaia, and Gaia births from Uranus 6 males and 6 females, if you read the storyline. And the sixth male, 5 of them he causes to stay in the womb of Gaia. Okay? And the sixth one then rises up and she tricks him and hides him and gives him a stone instead on the sixth day. And interpretation of this biblically is the sixth day when he created man in his image. He ended up supposedly getting tricked by Gaia. And so Cronus, the father of time, I guess it was Cronus that had the other 5, was the sixth one. But he was going to have 5 children too, evidently. And I was reading this, if you want to read it. This is the origin and creation. We'll teach the father. So basically, Zeus was plagued by, Zeus was the son. Zeus was challenged Kronos to war. So you got Zeus challenging God to war. Kronos, father of time. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is the analogy of this so much, if you break it down and look at it, it's basically the Osiris, Isis, Horus analogy. Osiris represents the death of God. Now there's some prophecy stating that the sixth child, Kronos had a prophecy on him, who's the father of time, that the sixth child would overcome him, overtake him. And there was also some talk about how in this testimony this is untrue, but it comes from the fallen angels who make themselves gods, which where you get the Greek gods from, are the fallen angels. Probably taught this story to man during the times before Noah, or during the times of Noah and the flood. when the earth was polluted and had to be flooded. The story about the angels teaching men worthless knowledge and basically telling them lies about creation to exalt themselves as gods. And you'll notice here that one of the things that I noticed when I read this was that Gaia was upset that he had hidden the 5 days within the womb of theirs, and then he later casts them into the abyss, or the Tartarus. Okay, so your head of 5 here, casting the Tartarus of 5 days, would probably represent something to do with the hiding of the, I mean, I guess that you could interpret that as like the tree of life being sealed up with the 2 swords, causing the 5 days to go, and the 6th day after sin to go into this Tartarus situation. Adam and Eve. Adam would represent probably Kronos, father of time, the first man. She birthed Kronos, who would then betray God and take over God. So this is a picture of Cain overcoming the father with the help, of course, the fallen angels. This is just a very much a deceitful underlying story. The 2 things I noticed most about it was that they deny the existence of spirit before water, and then the water is only given as a reference as the polluted water, which would be the picture of Gaia being upset because God, threw down the 5 in the valley. And there was also a reference to how he didn't know why they swallowed the 5, because maybe he was just being he wanted his wife to himself, or he was just being selfish or whatever. I took this connotation as meaning this was Father keeping the water from the fallen angels, because the woman, or the water, receiving from the Spirit and giving birth from the Word, Spirit, water, Word, implies that they lift up Gaia as a physical earth, but it came into form from chaos, which is darkness and water, Spirit on the water. They don't put the Spirit on the water. They say by some divine, maybe this, maybe that. They leave it question marked. Okay. The testimony of the Genesis from Moses, however, tells us another story. And in the cross teaching, I teach where the Spirit, God Father, created heaven and the earth. And in this connotation here, this is saying, in the beginning was created chaos. There was chaos, and we don't know how it got there. So we don't know God. And in the chaos was earth, and it was without form or void, and it materialized on its own. And then it gave birth to God. And then God made it with it, fertilized it, and created 6 days of creation. Okay. Then on the 6th day he had a son that would be prophesied to overcome God, not overcome Uranus, the spirit, and put the spirit into captivity. Okay. This is what you're getting from this testimony. This is obviously something that the fallen angels were teaching man all the way back in the times of Atlantis, and were carried out through man's vulnerability to be able to connect to unclean spirits through the darkness, thinking that he is making this of himself, but just so that he can't see the source of this information in his own mind. And this causes one to think they're intellectual, makes them haughty, and puts glory upon themselves. And a lot of times you have that situation with kings as well. So, excuse me. So, the testimony is untrue, and I believe the source of this was when we have the first lie from the snake in the garden. So it looks like we have actually a lie and an expanded lie from the snake in the garden. Okay. And then the testimonies of creation. So we're going to just put down Satan because the snake is just an animal. And it manifests the fruits. This is a seed, and the fruits that manifest here before the flood are the lies of the fallen ones. Now, when you look at this from a realistic point of view, and you see the connection here. So everything is referenced in Scripture like a tree. You have the roots, the seed, the roots, and then the fruit. Usually in between, the course in between is filled with history, events. Certain people play certain roles in this time period, but we look at the fruits. Jesus said you'll know them by the fruits. So we try to look at the fruits, and then we try to look at the source to find out the pollution in the source to know why the fruit is not good. So here you have your, basically you have the first lie of Satan being the seed. Okay. And then you have the fruit of that seed coming from this tree planted outside of the Father. There has been a tree planted outside of my Father, it being weak, shall be pulled up by the roots and burned. Okay, so you have seed fruit. Now, Nimrod probably was the first one to actually get in close enough to this lie to bring it back after the flood. He is the one that brought in the Babylon Tower, created Babylon, multi-speaking language. He would be the first source. The teachings of Osiris, Iris, and Horus probably came as a religion from Nimrod. And it was probably from his interactions with the fallen angels and demons after the flood. Remember, he hated God, so he was in the likeness of Satan. So above Cyrus, you would have had the seed would have been Nimrod. Now the Egyptians picked up this Osiris thing. Okay. So Nimrod's your seed. Now before him was one of the sons of Noah, who dishonored his father and gave offspring, and was cursed to give offspring as hunters and would the land, and that was exactly what Nimrod was basically in his type. Nimrod would have been the seed, and then Osiris would have been where that pagan religion came from, that Babylonian religion came from. It's worshiping other gods as well. Worshiping other gods is basically worshiping fallen angels. You see, a holy angel don't classify themselves as a god. They're servants to the Almighty. Okay, the only ones that classify themselves as a lowercase gods is going to be a fallen angel. Okay, because they have not come through in the physical, they can only give offspring by mating with the daughters of men. The other one I didn't tell you about was up here. I didn't give you. This was Satan. I'm going to give you this one here, who is the head of the seven that did this in the fruit thereof, and that was Simjaza. I don't know if I spelled that right or not. Probably not. That's spelled with an I, actually. It's not in my dictionary. I probably didn't spell it right, but he's the first one that came up with the idea and made the oath with the other six is named Simjaza. Now those seven came down, and they have under them a multitude under them, and Simjaza was one of the seven who made an oath on Mount Hermes, and under them they had, I think, like 200 or captains of 10, quite a few fallen angels under Simjaza and the under six, who came down and made with the daughters of men and brought men of old men renowned, which were good giants. And I do believe it's through Nimrod and his Satan worship that through his offspring that the giants were re-entered back into the creation from this religion, from the Egyptians, because we know that the Egyptian culture was all about the greys and the lizard people, which were also of the fallen angels. And you have Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And so this is an implication that Osiris is the death of the spirit, which is the death of father, going to overtake the father. Isis rises up. She gets a son from Osiris, Horus. Okay, so then now Isis takes rulership because now she is queen over Horus, who's the reincarnated father, who she gives credit for bringing into the creation because she not only birthed the child, she also caused to conceive him before he died, supposedly. This story is very much in the image of the story of the Greek mythology. The Greek mythology actually comes into play after the Osiris, Isis, the Nimrod, Babylonian religion. It comes in by way of Greece, Parthians and Medes. And your pollution of mother is the polluted water, the deluge water. She's actually the great whore where we get the sirens, Jezebel spirit, spirit of female, all this stuff. And there was a great betrayal. I'm going to tell you what this betrayal is. And this is something that maybe you ought to look at really closely. From what I understand, these sirens had to do a little bit of work on their own to give birth to these, to give children to these angels, these fallen angels. The betrayal was they betrayed man to mate with fallen ones. They came out of man. Instead of being loyal to man, they left man to mate with fallen ones and then came back and tried to pollute man with their impurities, bringing man under submission to serve them. This is where we get the Isis situation, the Horus, okay? And the women at that time actually were involved in a betrayal to the men that they were supposed to be with, polluting them. This is the polluted water, the pollution of the water, the pollution of the motherhood. They would rather lie with fallen angels than their own species. That's the betrayal. And they would rather dishonor the one they came from and neglect him and kick him out so that they can have jurisdiction over him and then want to make him a slave to only serve him for his seed, but not honor him for who he is in authority over her. And that is where you get the spirit of the female mentality and logic. Now, you can read more into this. I'm not going to go into real big depth on this because I did read a lot of it. But as far as going over it on video, that could take a long time. The sun Helios traversed the heavens as a... And, all these things that they're giving dictations, they're all discredited by the fact that they're in the same image as the Nimrod, Osiris, Babylonian religion that took on a religion when Father came down and disrupted man and caused them to speak different languages, which is called Babylon. And this came from Nimrod because of what Nimrod was doing, gathering the people, building a tower unto heaven so that he could fight against God in the heavens and build a secret avenue from the underworld to the heavenly world. Okay, giving Satan access to the heavens to fight God with him. Nimrod being the vessel thereof. That was thwarted by the angels, holy angels of heaven coming down, confounding their language, and it turned into a religious cult that we know today as the Osiris, Isis, Horus cult, where Isis gets to transform just like Gaia gets to come into existence on her own. I think she come into existence on her own out of chaos, because I guess Osiris represents chaos or something. He went to war, which would be chaos. And then when he died, she took a seed, got a seed, and it's probably mythological. It probably never really happened. It's just a story to relate you to the testimony of the fallen ones. They're untrue. Now, let me ask you a question. If it's possible for you to believe a lie and be damned, how important is it for you to understand that what I'm trying to do here is clear up the lies for you so that you can understand what's really going on around you in this world today? Okay? Horus becomes the reincarnated father, Horus son, Horus husband. So he plays a dual role in being father and son, and he's the god of war. Okay? So here is your prophesied one who's going to fight against God. And this is an image of Nimrod. Okay? So here's your father and son, but he's a god of war. I want to put a G, I'm just going to put G-O-D. Oh, well, it's not going to let me. Okay, well, whatever. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But here's your god of war. Now, we see Father warring in the first covenant. And I'm going to go into maybe later, I might get into some issues with that. See, this one probably belongs below this other one too, but if you want to read this story, just look up Greek mythology and go to Wikipedia. This comes right off of Wikipedia. It gives you the story behind it, but when you read it and you dwell on it a little bit, you begin to understand that basically what they're explaining is the same thing that came from Nimrod. So they're just changing the names, they're giving the gods names, they're giving the fallen ones names, they're giving man who has been heroic like Nimrod, who's this mighty hunter, he gets a god, he gets to become a god when he dies, and he gets a name like maybe Atlantis or something like that, or Hercules maybe. And you got Zeus, who's supposed to be over the other gods, so that's like Satan over the other gods. And then you have a prime of 5, you know. And Satan would, over the other gods, Zeus would probably be the carnal nature of Adam that was created through disobedience in the garden. Or maybe the outcome of Cain, who was the first murderer. That's your picture of Zeus from a realistic point of view. Yet this religion exalts them as gods, favorable. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I've got some more to do, but I'm going to section this off a little bit. I'm not going to try to do it all on one time. So I wanted you to see this, if you'll go over and study this, because this is going to set up a basis for the rest of my videos to kind of show you where we're at today. Okay, and maybe give you some foundation as to why I've done the things that I've said in my previous videos, is why I say it. Because when I go through and look at these things, I already knew most of this stuff anyway, but putting it in front of you from a research standpoint maybe might help you, convince you a little bit more maybe, you know, that the only way to really get to know the Father, and the only pattern that you could really realistically get of the truth about Father and His perfection is what He's given me to show you with the cross and how the cross works. Now, see, all this stuff here reveals what's missing from the cross teachings. And what was easily noticed here is that in this story, they're not giving any merit to the spirit and water. And the only merit that they give to the water is the polluted water, okay, which is the picture of the angels mating with the daughters of men, the sirens. Okay. And that the spirit, and that this polluted mother is the mother of all living. So this is your story about the carnal nature of Eve that came into existence from the sin of the serpent in the garden, and the fruit that came from it by the mixing of the Cain lineage, Seth lineage, in the times of Noah that polluted the whole earth at that time. And then, i.e., the great Atlantis that came in that existed for a period of time and then fell away because the lust, the bottomless pit effect started hitting the giants, and you couldn't please them, and no matter what you fed them. They basically tried to devour the earth. They tried to devour all, you know, Satan was all about, these fallen angels were all about polluting the whole earth with death and pillaging it. and shedding blood and the violence that took place. And your Horus is no different picture. Okay, you've got the great whore, and behind her you got the god, and underneath her you got the beast, which is the god of war. She sits upon a beast, scarlet-covered beast. Okay, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, it's also 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, one is, and one is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Probably talking about the Ottoman Empire. The 6th king, I saw one of his heads was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. The Christian first church, as they kept trying to kill the Christians, they would grow, and they would grow, and they would grow. It wasn't until Constantine decided to bring Christian religion and make it a national religion, a capital religion in Rome, that Rome got healed and became an empire again. Now from that is going to be pulled out 3 horns.